Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony from the Forest Service, the Department of the Interior, and a number of other witnesses on 14 different bills. I'm especially pleased that my good friend and my state legislator, Representative Keven Stratton of Utah, from the Utah House of Representatives, is here in attendance and will be testifying today. Representative Stratton is a real leader, not just in my state, but across the country, on issues related to public lands, and particularly those in the state of Utah. And I feel very fortunate to have him here testifying in support of my bill, the MORE PILT Act. As you all know, PILT, the acronym standing for Payment in Lieu of Taxes, was passed into law in 1976 at a time when U.S. policy was shifting from disposal of federal lands to perpetual retention. Well, I believe that this shift represented a misstep and has denied many Westerners access to, in some cases, ownership of lands that they had previously been promised access to. I believe it's important to review this history, to have Congress either correct course appropriately or compensate states for the necessary policy changes. Well, I'll continue to advocate for Congress to correct course and return more land to the states which are better equipped to manage and conserve our public lands for the benefit of future generations. In the meantime, we must make sure that Congress appropriately compensates states, particularly states like mine, where most of the land is owned by the federal government. Compensate them for the loss of revenue that they incur as a result of perpetual federal land ownership. Because these lands were no longer likely to enter into the portfolio of locally taxable lands, a federal commission recommended at the time that funds should be offered to local governments. Congress agreed and created the PILT program. In FY 2016, the PILT program covered 606.9 million acres, or about 94% of all federal land. The PILT program payments are determined by a complex and sometimes Byzantine labyrinth of a formula that includes a number of factors: the number of eligible acres in a county, the population of a county, the previous year's federal payments under similar programs, the existence of state laws that require payments from federal agencies to be passed through to other local governments, and the change in the consumer price index from the previous year. Unfortunately, these criteria do not always result in a fair and equitable PILT payment. Government agencies have identified that payments under PILT are far lower than what they would be due under a tax equivalency formulation. But by how much? Well, that's the question that the MORE PILT Act is designed to answer. It would direct the Secretary of the Interior to create a model or tool and then conduct a study and ultimately issue a report describing the true taxable value of land owned by the federal government. That is what the value would be if it were owned by anyone other than the federal government, and then make recommendations on how PILT payments could be made to more accurately reflect the land's actual taxable value, which, after all, was the objective of the PILT program back when it was created in the first place. Additionally, I want to highlight two bills on the agenda that are also important to the people of Utah: S. 1686, the Human-Powered Travel in Wilderness Areas Act, and S. 1222, the Bonneville Shoreline Trail Advancement Act. These two bills deal with the issue of trail use in federal wilderness areas. An estimated 40 million Americans engage in mountain biking every year. Mountain biking is the second most popular trail activity in the United States. Utah's diverse terrain and scenery makes it a world-class mountain biking destination. Although mountain biking is allowed on most federal public lands in Utah and across the nation, it's restricted inside federally designated wilderness and federally managed wilderness study areas. The Wilderness Act of 1964, to be sure, prohibits motorized or mechanized transport within wilderness. The Forest Service's first regulations for wilderness which were issued in 1966, banned only those devices powered by quote-unquote non-living power source, thus allowing for human-powered transport, including bicycles. It wasn't until the 1970s that the Forest Service changed its regulations to prohibit bicycles in wilderness. The Department of the Interior has a similar history. My bill, S-1686, would address this issue by amending the Wilderness Act to ensure that rules restricting mechanical transport do not include forms of human-powered, non-motorized travel. Additionally, the bill would grant federal land managers at the local level the authority to determine whether, where, and when to allow non-motorized travel over existing particular routes, as opposed to the current model, which is just a blanket, flat-out regulatory prohibition, regardless of the suitability of the area for mountain biking. The Bonneville Shoreline Trail Advancement Act, S-1222, of which I'm an original sponsor, would advance a locally driven initiative to complete the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. The bill would adjust the boundary of wilderness to exclude segments of the trail along the Wasatch Range, where 85% of the population of the state of Utah resides. Utahns are asking Congress to act because they cherish trails and they want them open to more recreational uses, including mountain biking. These and many other pressing issues will be examined today, and I look forward to hearing testimony from today's witnesses on legislation pending before the Senate. Thank you, Madam Chair.